What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I want to talk about balance. Now what do I mean by that? I'm talking about balancing out your foreground and your sky to make everything look cohesive. Now this is a shot that I took 8 years ago on my first road trip, and I was under these time constraints and the weather wasn't working out. The original shot was this right here. It was a cloudy day, which I knew would help me to create this composite because the lighting was nice and flat. But at that time, I was not the best at compositing images, so it just doesn't look natural to me. So I'm gonna re-edit this shot and show you guys how we can make it look a lot more natural. And for those that are not into compositing, that's totally fine. This also applies for anybody that's into blending photos. So if you're taking long exposures during astronomical twilight, you can see the Milky Way starting to come out right here. So maybe you take your photo during twilight, and then as soon as it turns to true night, you take your Milky Way shot and then you blend the two. This video is going to help you guys create a better blend that looks more natural. See, the problem with this is it's very bright up here and still dark down here. So we're going to correct that. We also have a lot of blue, which I'm going to show you guys the easy way to get rid of. And we want to try and make this a nice, flat, even light. Now we're going to jump over to one more image right here of the same spot, Palouse Falls in Washington. And this was taken at night. So this is a 6-minute exposure at f4, 14 millimeters, ISO 2000. Now I'm showing you guys this so you can see how flat and even that light is across the foreground, and that's what we're going to try and mimic on our blended images. So I took this shot first, and then I took another shot using my star tracker, and then I blended the two. Now a lot of the mistakes that I'm seeing on Instagram and Facebook are people are doing these long exposures or these twilight exposures, and they're making the foreground just very bright as if it's still daytime, and then they're putting a really dark sky in there and it just doesn't look natural. So we want to try to avoid that, and we're going to try and balance out the exposures for our sky and our foreground. So jumping back to this photo, we can work on this first. Right off the bat, I want to warm this up. And I want to pull out a lot of the blue. This is another common mistake that I see photographers not doing. They have a lot of blue fringing around trees and their horizon line, so pull out a lot of that blue. Don't be afraid if some of these colors get a little bit muted when we do this. We could bring back some saturation later, but we want to get that blend in first with the sky to be perfect before we start introducing color again. So we pulled out the blue, we warmed this up a little bit. Now I just want to brighten down here. And try and balance out the light from here to this section up here. It is still a little bit warmer right here, so I actually want to just cool this area so it matches the rest of the image. So I'm going to just paint in this area. I'm going to do this really quickly, but you could obviously take your time when you're doing your photos. And we're just going to cool that. Now it's more consistent with the overall image. Hit close, and I want to darken this up because it's very bright. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast, darken the exposure, darken my highlights and my whites. Now you can see that the foreground, the lighting is very flat, very similar to our night shot. Ignore just the colored variance that we have going on, that can be adjusted later. Now I'm going to pull out a little bit more of the blue. And a little bit of the aqua. Alright, so let's bring this over to Photoshop next. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop, and I just want to make a copy of the image. Now there's several different ways we can remove the sky. I'm actually just going to use our sky replacement tool here under Edit, Sky Replacement. I've really fallen in love with this. It's so quick and easy, and I found a Milky Way that's similar in the direction that it should be according to this location. So I'm just going to drag this down and put it in the proper spot, which is right about there. Okay, shift edge, it's fine at 0. I just want to change the fade edge down to about 50. And it just does a fantastic job. And because we did that extra step in the beginning where we removed a lot of the blue and some of the aqua, you don't have that blue fringe that you sometimes get in trees or the horizon line. So do that extra step and pull some of the blue out. It's going to help your blends, especially if you're doing twilight shots and you want to blend it with your Milky Way. That extra step helps and makes the process go by so much faster and easier. So going down to brightness, this Milky Way, it doesn't have too much contrast in it and is a little bit brighter than our foreground, which is fine. I'm going to actually adjust this with a curves adjustment layer in a minute, so I'm not going to adjust it here in the sky replacement box. So I'm going to leave brightness on 0. The temperature is actually pretty comparable to our foreground. It's not too warm or too cool, so I'm going to leave it as is. Scale is fine, the lighting mode is fine. Now, lighting adjustment, if it was on 0, you can see how bright it is along the horizon. We want to increase this to at least 50 just to make it a little bit darker. You want that light fall off as it gets further away from you, and you typically see along the horizon. So I keep it around 50. And then color adjustment, we really don't have to play around with that too much either. So I'm going to hit OK. Now you're going to have a sky replacement group folder. If it's closed, you just want to open it up, click on the sky image right here, and I want to create an adjustment layer. So go to adjustment, curves. Now if I start doing an adjustment, it's going to apply it to the whole image, which we don't want. So we want to create a clipping mask, which I'll put shortcuts down here for you guys, depending if you're using a PC or Mac. I'm also using a Pro panel, so I'm actually just going to click right here where it says clip mask. And now it's just going to apply it to the sky only. So I'm going to do a S curve. Now as I start creating this S curve, let me just show you guys something. I'm going to take it to the extreme, but this is what I see sometimes on Instagram and Facebook. These people are posting these images of this bright foreground and then these really high contrast skies that are nice and dark and rich, and it just doesn't look right. So when I talk about balance, this is what I'm talking about right here, where you want to make sure your sky matches your foreground as best as possible. You kind of just eyeball it, but I'm going to brighten this up a little bit. And if you want that core to have more contrast, we could do some dodging and burning, but overall, try and make the sky look natural to your foreground as far as the brightness goes. So right about there looks pretty good. You have some wiggle room. Obviously, it's a little bit of personal preference as well, but I'm going to keep it right there and just stamp up my image so I can do some further adjustments if I want. So using a Pro panel, I'm going to go to Effects and hit the Shift key for core contrast. And this is going to add a little more contrast to the core of the Milky Way. Now, if you don't have Pro panel, you could do this with several different methods, some dodging and burning. You can do structure, whatever you want to do to kind of enhance your Milky Way core. I'm going to hit OK. And here's the before and after. And if it's too strong of an effect, you can just lower the opacity a little bit. So I'll go to 60%, and that looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to flatten the image. Don't flatten it if you plan on doing more changes, but I'm just doing it for this video. And I can bring it back in Lightroom and do additional adjustments, play around with my saturation, things of that nature. But let's go back to Lightroom and work on the other photo really quick. All right, so the workflow for this image is going to be very similar to our twilight shot that we just did. I have a couple options with this photo. I could darken it and make it basically like a silhouette, or I could leave it a little bit brighter and just make sure I find a Milky Way that works with that brightness so we have good balance, as I said before. So let's just darken it a little bit. Lower the highlights and the whites. And let's scroll down here. I want to pull out my blue again. Now, even though this wasn't taken at twilight, and I have these nice gray clouds. There's still some blue in those clouds, so I want to get rid of that. I'll pull out some aqua too, and I actually want to pull out some of this green because it's a little too strong. If we're trying to mimic a night shot, the colors are typically muted, so we want to tone this down a little bit. And we'll pull out some of the orange and yellow as well. Alright, so that looks okay right there, and let's just bring this into Photoshop. So right click, go to edit in Adobe Photoshop, which I already did that. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and we're going to make a copy like before. I'm going to use sky replacement. Okay, so this Milky Way right here, there's more contrast to it and it is darker, so you can see it doesn't look that natural, but we can make some adjustments to fix that. So first I want to position it. Adjust the fade edge a little bit. Now in this case, I'm going to brighten it about 40. And if I put this on 0, you can see the transition is kind of harsh. So you want to darken that transition at the horizon, make it a little darker. If we go all the way, it might be a little too much. So let's go around 60. And then color adjustment, we can play around with that too. And hit OK. I'm going to create another curves layer adjustment on just the Milky Way and just, kind of fine tune that a little bit more. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good right there. And we could stamp up. And from here I can do some further adjustments, some dodging and burning, or I could use some of the effects in the Pro panel, whatever I want to do. But let's just save this out for now.
The picture on the left is a composite from today, and the one on the right is from 8 years ago. With the new image, you can see how clean the transition is from the foreground into the sky, and it might not look like a huge difference, but this subtle change really helps make the composite look more authentic. So whether you're doing composites or blending long exposure foregrounds with your sky, just find that happy medium which gives you natural looking results. Okay everybody, hope this helps. Take care, bye bye.